The legal view on this. Advocate Romeo Ntambalenia, legal analyst, joins us now. Romeo, good afternoon to you, and thanks once again for your time on Newsfeed. Did Judge Piet Koen really have any choice? Does he need to wait for all of this to come from the Supreme Court of Appeal before he lets this matter go any further?
Yeah, and good afternoon, Stephen, and to the viewers. As you have rightfully said in your intro there, the judge's hands were tied in terms of proceedings that are reconsideration proceedings that are in a superior court, being the Supreme Court of Appeal. So, this is just about throwing the spanner to the works, Steve, and keep postponing this matter. You heard that when the submissions were being made, there was a request that the matter is supposed to be postponed sine die. Sine die means there must be no date that is set whatsoever to actually make a determination of the date. But the judge refused that and said, let's put a date where we can be able to make a determination of consideration so that the matter ultimately proceeds.
I mean, two things could happen here. The one is that the Supreme Court of Appeal probably, I mean, if I'm right, doesn't need to actually hold a hearing. They could make a decision, well, like that. We could wake up tomorrow morning and maybe they'll have made a decision on the papers. Yeah. That doesn't stop former President Zuma going to the Constitutional Court on exactly the same issue. Would that be correct?
Absolutely, you are correct. This is what I was thinking about to say. Perhaps tomorrow we might have a decision to say the Supreme Court of Appeal has looked at the matter on its paper and there's no need to call further evidence, and the appeal is dismissed. The reconsideration is dismissed, and then it doesn't mean that the trial will start in earnest. We can still have the can being kicked down the road to the Constitutional Court, and then from the Constitutional Court, when you're done with the Constitutional Court, you can also again ask for a reconsideration from the Constitutional Court and wait for another 2 years. When the Constitutional Court refuses, you say, no, there's no justice in this court in South Africa. I want to go to the African Court on Human and People's Rights. From there, you go to The Hague. So it's not going to end now.
Zuma's legal team, as I understand it today, were very angry that somebody had dared to suggest that they were using a Stalingrad legal approach. Mzwanele Mani, standing perhaps on his dignity, making angry at the same suggestion. He claims that today's judgment proves that they're not using a Stalingrad approach, the judge saying that he can't say that they're abusing the court process. I would like to think, Romeo, as citizens of a free country, we're guaranteed our right to freedom of expression and our own views on whether or not we think it is a Stalingrad tactic or not.
Yeah, absolutely. You're quite correct, Steve, that citizens are allowed to actually make up their own mind by what they're actually seeing transpiring in the proceedings, before court, and they can make their own determination. And that argument of Stalingrad tactics was there on the papers, and the NPA actually argued very strongly that these are the tactics that are being employed by the accused person in this matter.
Does all of this have an impact, do you think? I mean, you're an officer of the court, to use that expression. You're an advocate. You played a very important role in resolving disputes in your own way yourself. Do you worry that all of this just gives the impression that some people can delay things and not have to worry about justice? Do you worry that, in the eyes of the public, this may be an abusive process?
Don't forget, Steve, that there's also an issue of private prosecution, and the issue of private prosecution that is being bandied about talks about a person with a lot of money to actually engage, the proceedings in that particular manner, because it requires a lot of money as well. And as you have correctly pointed out, it doesn't give confidence to the public in general in terms of how matters are handled in court. And like I said previously when we had this engagement, that Steve, if it was you and me, we could have been convicted a long time ago. People could have forgotten about us, and perhaps we could be serving half of the sentence and going out. So the leeway is there, and everyone with eyes can be able to see what is actually happening.
There is another issue around the idea of a private prosecution of someone who, in fact, was acting on behalf of, legally acting for the National Prosecuting Authority. I'm talking about Advocate Billy Downer. Is that, as I understand it, for a private prosecution to be allowed, the National Prosecuting Authority, and I think, in fact, the National Director of Public Prosecutions herself, has to issue her certificate. I forget the name of the certificate, but has to actually say, we will not prosecute. Now, there's a little wrinkle there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. You're actually correct. The certificate that you're speaking about is called the Nolle Prosecute certificate that must be issued by the Director of Public Prosecution. And in this instance, that certificate has not been issued. And then you must also remember that we have to wait for that certificate for private prosecution proceedings to actually start in earnest. Today, there was an issue of the letter that was written to the NPA to remove Billy Downer. And the NPA refused and said there's no basis for them to actually remove the prosecutor because the courts have actually indicated that there's no basis, legal basis whatsoever for the removal of the prosecutor. So without the nollie prosecute certificate, you're not going to take the matter any further whatsoever. So as we are saying, Steve, it's the point of kicking the can down the road. You have to pick it up at some point. And the moment you remove Billy Downer, you're not solving the problem because they are going to actually then come for the entire NPA to say the entire NPA is tainted and cannot be able to prosecute. So you're not resolving any issue by removing the lead prosecutor in the matter.
Advocate Romeo Ntombaleni, as always, I really appreciate the time. I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to require more of your time over the next few months on this case. So thank you very much indeed. Well,